some, okay. You'll have some questions after the session. Thank you. You'll be given some questions just to answer after the session. Thank you. Okay. Okay, allow me just to start with just understanding what evidence is. I know most of us have used these words in different forums, in different sessions. We've heard about evidence in the courts and in the scientific field, but what is it really? It is anything that is used to determine or demonstrate the truth of an assertion. And we can also talk of anything that suggests serving as proof of existence of something. That is what we refer to as evidence. But now, what is scientific evidence? We've talked of evidence in research. We talked of evidence-informed decision-making, but what is this scientific evidence? Sorry, let me just put down this. Okay, thank you. When you talk of scientific evidence, we refer to evidence that supports or counters scientific theory or hypothesis. And this is generated either through laboratory research, laboratory experiments, or even through phenomenal observations and other type of research that you conduct out there, qualitative studies. We're able to collect evidences from various people or various outcomes. For instance, if you conduct a qualitative study, you'll be able to collect information from individuals either by word of mouth or through writing. And when you collect that and put them together, you'll be able to generate some evidence for that particular study. And now, what is evidence-informed practice? Because evidence, scientific evidence normally leads to evidence-informed practice. And even before I talk about evidence-informed practice, there are two things. We have evidence-informed practice and evidence-based practice. And these two have been used interchangeably. But this doesn't mean that they are one and the same. They have some differences. Whereas the evidence-based practice refers to using the best available evidence for decision-making. Evidence-informed decision-making is the integration of research, just as the diagram is showing here. There is the integration of research evidence alongside practitioners who have knowledge and skills. You know, when they bring in their knowledge and skills, and the researcher brings in the evidence and the people's experience, the social experience from other people. When all these three are integrated, we talk of evidence-informed practice. Whereas, as I've said, evidence-based is just based on the evidence that is the best available evidence. There's nothing in it that emphasizes on any outcomes or something based on other experiences. And you'll find that evidence-based, it's like an evolution from evidence-based. Evidence-informed is like an evolution from evidence-based practice. Just an illustration just to show the importance of evidence rather. I just use these falsifiable, necessity for falsifiability, sorry. Necessity for falsifiability suggests that, for instance, when you look at swans, all swans are white. When you're told that all swans are white, what do you think? Of course, you can be able to prove that they're not white. All of them are not white. And all you need is just to spot a swan that is either black or brown, because those ones exist, and for sure they exist. And you'll be able to give the counteract to the statement. What about all bachelors are unmarried? What do you think about this statement? Is it false or true? Can you prove it? Does it need any proof? Number one, bachelors is when you talk of unmarried and bachelor, it's relatable. So you don't need any proof, because once someone is a bachelor, definitely it means that person is unmarried. So those are just two examples on how evidence can be necessary in some instances. Okay, let us look at the flow of evidence from generation to implementation. In generation, we talk of generation of primary research, different types of research. I won't talk about it because the first presenter really described the different type of research that you have and even touched a bit on how evidence synthesis comes in terms of the different types of research that we have. And then you have synthesis of relevant evidence. Once you get the research, you synthesize the relevant evidence. And then the evidence now reaches the policymaker. And here I would like to talk about two things. The mode of evidence need. We have the push and the pull mode. When you talk of evidence synthesis, this can be synthesized as a result of a request from a policymaker. And we call that a pull mode. But if it is as a result from the efforts from the researcher, we call that a push mode, whereby you as a researcher has done some work and you feel that from the studies that you've looked at and even the problems that you've identified, this evidence is necessary to reach the policymaker. You can be able to contact the policymaker and let them know of the evidence available. And by contacting, I mean, you start involving the policymaker at an earlier stage. Don't wait to get the evidence and then now bring in the policymaker. It might not work easily. As we'll see later, it's not a linear process. Once it reaches the policymaker values the evidence and uses it in decision making. And this policymaker or the policymakers will implement the large-scale change that was as a result of the synthesized evidence that was generated from the primary research. And in as much as it looks like a very easy and linear process, the whole process is not linear. As you will see later on, it is a process that has got a lot of things going on based on the type of ecosystem that evidence is in. I'll just describe a bit the evidence ecosystem. And there are three main elements in the evidence ecosystem. We have the evidence generation, evidence synthesis, and evidence translation. As I had mentioned earlier, it is not a linear process, and there are many factors that affect evidence implementation. We have the regulatory aspects. We have the politics, which normally takes like 70% of the whole thing. We have the culture and practices of a particular community or a particular country. We have the economy. Is it something sustainable? Is it something that can be managed? Is the change of any economic benefits? And then you also have the social aspects that affect the evidence space. And as I have mentioned, this process is not linear. This is, I just pulled this from a presentation I'd given earlier on policy making. And this is how it looks like. We have the agenda setting, decision making, policy formulation, policy implementation, evaluation and monitoring. So our evidence aspects will touch on agenda setting and decision making on those two. But by the time the whole change is implemented, this is what it looks like, because you have many players in the evidence ecosystem space. We have the cabinet, the parliament, the ministries, the private sector, the civil society and the donors, and many other people. You have the church, they also affect decisions that are made. Those decisions affect them, so they have a say on that. So there's a lot of back and forth when we are working towards maybe making a particular change as a result of a particular evidence. I hope we are together up to this stage. May I just see a thumbs up if you're together? Are we there?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. At times it's so quiet until you feel like you're talking to yourself. Yeah. Okay, so I've just demonstrated on how the evidence ecosystem looks like, on how the back and forth will make the whole thing look like. And you'll find that in most, especially in low and middle income countries, you'll find that some of even the policies that have been maybe formulated or informed by particular evidences don't get to be implemented because of this type of cycles. The cycles go on, and you find that it's almost like 6 or 7 years down the line and nothing has been done because there's no agreement at some point, or there's a lot of crisscrossing in the decisions. We'll talk about evidence synthesis. I believe you've gotten something in what evidence is, and how the evidence ecosystem looks like, what it entails. Maybe the only thing that I've not talked about is evidence translation, which is a whole different, it's like a whole workshop on its own. But that maybe just to touch a bit on it is, it's just how you're going to translate this evidence to the right people, to the right, when you're translating, you try to consider your audience. Will they be able to understand what you're saying? How are you translating it? If you're translating it for, let's say, the cabinets, these are politicians, and you're a scientist who have done this work, and you need them to get the information that you're trying to share there. Of course, you're going to use a totally different language, and you might use a totally different tool. There are several tools for knowledge translation also, or rather evidence translation. So for that, I'll not touch much. Maybe Fortune will organize another workshop for evidence translation or knowledge translation. Yeah, but let's talk about evidence synthesis. What is this and why do we need it? Evidence synthesis simply refers to the techniques or the tools that we use to combine multiple sources of data. And these can be as a result of different types of studies. I remember the previous speaker just shared with you the hierarchy of evidence. That's why I'm not tackling it here, but you saw the different types of studies that you have in the hierarchy of evidence. We have from the expert opinion up there where you have the meta-analysis. But before we get there, there's several studies down here that can be used to inform that systematic review up there. Those are the type of, that's the combination we're talking about. And this can be as a result of clinical or observational studies. And it just helps to bring all the findings together for a comprehensive understanding. I hope that is clear. Just bringing together the data to answer a particular question. And this data has to be relevant to that particular question. And even the search, as we'll see there's a way you conduct your search to be able to get the relevant data for that particular question. Okay, what is... Sorry for that. Why is evidence synthesis important? It helps it to make sense of the research. You'll find that when you're conducting synthesis, it's as a result, you first of all develop a question, and that particular question, you'll find that you get different answers from different studies, and therefore trying to make sense of that research. When trying to cope with the information overload that you experience currently, you can't imagine how much. Maybe let me just talk about my institution, the Kenya Medical Research Institute. We have about, I can say 2,000 researchers, and these researchers are busy conducting research and churning out publications. And by the time you think of it, by the end of the year, we have about even, let's say, 2,000 publications. You'll find that there's information overload out there. And for you to make sense of this information, we have to do something called evidence synthesis. You have to bring together the literature that is out there. So for us to be able to manage this information overload, evidence synthesis might be the best tool to use. And then through evidence synthesis, you can also justify future research, because as you conduct the synthesis, you read a lot of publications, you read a lot of papers, and this also enables you to identify gaps. In as much as you're trying to fill a gap, you'll still be able to identify a particular gap as you move along with your synthesis. Therefore, evidence synthesis can be useful for that, and also to facilitate access to relevant research. It also ensures better accountability. And if at all you're conducting a review in clinical trials, it will enable you to be able to find effective treatments, alternatives. And when you talk of synthesis, what do we mean? Or okay, we defined what it is, but how do we do it? We conduct it through reviews. And there are several types of reviews. Reviews are summaries of synthesis or synthesis of results, conclusion of other studies. But there are several types of reviews. We have narrative reviews, we have scoping reviews, we have systematic reviews, and rapid reviews. And these reviews differ methodologically in rigor, and some are rigorous, some are not, some are just summaries simply written, some take years, a year plus to conclude, some can take a week or 30 days to finish up. So they are different in many ways. I'll go through one by one, and I'll start with the narrative review. A narrative review is it's a simple type of review. It's just a summary of evidence on a given topic. And in most cases, you find that it's done by one person or two, very few people, probably an expert in that field. And it involves very few methods, just collecting and interpreting information and coming up with your write-up. But remember, anything that you're writing, any evidence you're trying to generate should be trustworthy. So it needs to be not authentic, but it needs to be clear. And even you need to cite your references clearly to show that you got this information from a particular reference. So what are some of the problems in narrative reviews compared to those other reviews? You find that in most cases, you're doing it maybe as an expert, one person, or maybe two with your mentor or with your mentee or something. And it's bound to bias, personal biases, publication biases, because there's no track of what you're looking. It's not like these others where you have to develop a clear search strategy of the type of research you want to look at. This one, you just use any publication that can give you that information, and that's prone to publication bias. And then we have language bias, but not so much. And then in most cases, it tackles small sample sizes. So you'll find that a narrative review is a bit a narrow type of review, and might not give much information compared to the other reviews. We have scoping reviews. These are type of synthesis where you use systematic iterative approach to identify and synthesize existing body of evidences. And the main reason why you conduct it is just to map the body of literature on a particular topic. And you'll find that this type of reviews are normally conducted as a pre-project literature review. Let me not say literature review, it might confuse you, think that it's the literature review you normally conduct. No, but it's like a before you conduct you've identified your topic, you need to understand which type of evidence is available. Yeah, that's when you conduct a scoping review. And the most important thing to note is that this type of review, you also need to make it a bit rigorous. It's almost close to systematic reviews, but there are some steps of systematic reviews that are not in this. And these reviews are based when a body of literature has not yet been comprehensively reviewed. They're basically used to clarify working definitions and conceptual boundaries of a topic or a field. And then you can also use it to identify literature gaps, because remember, you're doing it as a pre-project review. Something else to note, maybe with scoping reviews, before I move to rapid reviews, is that a scoping reviews might be conducted just like a systematic review. It might take the same time as a systematic review, or even more, because scoping reviews, you normally try to search your evidences from a wider. It's like you're being thrown into the sea. Definitely, you'll need to look at more publication, even more than the ones you'll use when conducting a systematic review. You need to have a source and search strategy, though not elaborate as that of a systematic review, as you'll see later. And then in a rapid review, something to notice that there's no need of appraisal. Remember, the previous speaker talked about appraisal of evidences. In scoping reviews, you don't appraise the evidences. You just go ahead and use them. And then you synthesize your data and come up with your write-up. But again, I'll emphasize on the fact that any evidence that you're churning out needs to be trustworthy. So you need to conduct it rigorously and even identify your references in a good way, in a clear way, that is. I'll talk about rapid reviews. We've looked at narrative reviews, we've looked at scoping reviews. I hope you're following. And now I'll just talk a bit about rapid reviews before we move to systematic reviews, which will take most of our time. So for rapid reviews, these are reviews that are conducted very quickly because maybe the output is needed, the answers are needed by policymakers within a very short time. The process is accelerated by not conducting some other sections of a systematic review. It's just like a systematic review, but it normally takes, say, 25 to 30 days, and your rapid review is ready, and you share it with the relevant individual or department that needs it. And you'll find that rapid reviews mostly are needed as a result. Okay, use the pull method, whereby the policymaker or the question is posed to the researcher. And now the researcher needs to go sit down and try to come up with relevant evidences to that question that can be used to tackle that problem. And you'll find that the scope is limited. The question scope is a bit limited. That's why it is shorter. And the searches, you might not do a comprehensive search the way you do with a systematic review. By this, I mean, when you go out for a systematic review, you're trying, for all these, you're trying to look for the best available evidences. But for a rapid review, it is a particular problem that is there then. So you'll be limited with the number of how back will you look at the publications, how back in terms of the temporal effect. Will you, if it's a problem that is being experienced in 2020, will you go back up to 1980 or something? No, you'll have to limit the number of years on the publications you're looking at. For scoping review, for rapid reviews, in most cases, you find that you just need a single reviewer in most cases, and like at least a single reviewer. But for a systematic review, you must have 2 and above because of the rigorous nature of the systematic review. Oops, sorry. Okay. Then at this stage, you're not going to conduct any risk of biases, no meta-analysis, in most cases, no mathematical aspects are going to be looked into when you're conducting a rapid review, unless it's just the minimal, the very basic ones. And then you'll also not conduct, okay, you'll need a qualitative summary, of course, but no meta-analysis. Unlike the other reviews where the narrative unlike the narrative review, just as the scoping review requires Prospero registration, rapid review also requires Prospero registration. And I'll talk a bit about Prospero registration when we'll be looking at the systematic review processes later on in this presentation. I hope we are good with that. We've looked at rapid reviews, we've looked at scoping reviews, we looked at narrative reviews. Now we are moving to the fourth type of synthesis method, which is a systematic review. And I believe that we are following. Just some thumbs up. Are we following? Okay, thank you. Okay, I know most of you have been waiting for these. During the introductions, I heard some people saying they've never done systematic reviews. Some were saying they've just started their systematic reviews, a systematic review rather. So what is this systematic review? What is a systematic review? It's a review, it is a type of synthesis in which bias has been reduced by several methods. We have the systematic identification of, when I talk of systematic identification, there are several things that you're identifying here. Systematic identification of the problem, systematic identification of the source of evidence, and systematic identification on the methodologies you're going to use. And then bias is reduced also through critical appraisal. I believe the first presenter talked about appraisal. When you're conducting a systematic review, once you've searched your papers, the papers that you want to look at, there are appraisal tools that you're going to use. And these appraisal tools vary per study. It depends on the type of study you're going to use in your systematic review, because we have tools that are best for particular studies. And then, of course, now the synthesis and relevant statistical aggregation. All these help in reducing biases in a systematic review. What are the main elements of a systematic review? Unlike the other reviews, apart from a rapid review, which also needs a protocol, I didn't mention that, but for a rapid review, you can develop a protocol also. The other reviews don't need a protocol, but for a systematic review, you need a pre-specified protocol. And I hope I included that in this presentation, and the steps on how the protocol is prepared. I think I did. We'll look at it later. It's quite rigorous also, just preparing that protocol, being very clear with what you want to do and how you're going to do in each and every step of that review. And then a systematic review tackles a clearly focused question. We'll also look at, maybe at the end of this, I didn't include it here, but at the end of it, after the question and answer session, or just before, I'll just take you through a bit through on a focused, how to focus your research question. But maybe just to talk a bit about a review question. When you're preparing your question, it needs to take up the PICO format. And what do I mean about the PICO? I know those who are already doing reviews know this. We have the PICO, PICOST, and PICOS. PICO refers to population intervention, comparator, and outcome. When you're coming up with your question, you need to look at those 4 elements. Your question should have those 4 elements. You should be able to, you should clearly identify your participants, that is the population. Clearly identify your intervention, if at all it is an interventional one. And then clearly identify your comparator. And in most cases, you'll find that in most cases, you normally don't have the C because there's no comparison being done. But in case you're comparing maybe 2 types of treatments, you need to be clear with your comparator. And all that should be seen in your question. And then you also need, very important is the outcome. The outcome must always be there. Your question should always address your outcome. Sometimes the time frame is not there. Sometimes we have the time frame. Did someone say something? Okay. Another important element is the predetermined selection criteria. How you're going to select your studies, the inclusion and exclusion criteria you're going to do. You need to have a detailed description of your search strategy. We'll also look at this later. I mean, just to note that the topic I was given is too wide that I couldn't cover everything here. That's why I've just said something like the search strategy, just how to conduct a search is also a whole presentation on its own. And then even how to formulate a research question is a whole presentation on its own. And then you need to just clearly explain the process, how you're going to conduct the synthesis and the interpretation. And then at the end of it, there's normally the updating of a systematic review. You'll find that when you go online, you search for a systematic review, you find that there's an older version and an updated version. It's because the authors are keeping track of the changes that are taking place, and they keep updating their reviews. Maybe they, in their previous protocol, they talked about maybe 3 years update, and they keep doing that. If there's no any change, they wait for another 3 years to keep updating that protocol. Not the protocol, but now the review itself. Those are the main elements of a systematic review. Now let's look at the process of preparing a systematic review. I hope I'm not moving so fast, and at least you're getting something.
Lillian, can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, some of our participants here said you're a bit too fast.
Okay.
Perhaps if you could share the slides with me, because some of them are complaining the text is tiny for them.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I know that it is there's too much in this presentation, and I'm sorry for that. There's no way I could leave some, but let me just share with you the presentation. Sorry for that. Yeah, because handling EIDM at the same time handling systematic reviews is a bit too heavy for 1.5 hours. But let me just do that right away. Share the presentation. Sorry, we've looked at. Okay, as we continue, we've looked at 3 different types of reviews: narrative reviews, scoping reviews, and rapid reviews. But the 3, I've just looked at them superficially because I just wanted to bring out the difference between the 4. But now we'll try to be a bit in-depth on systematic reviews. I talked about narrative reviews, which are just like summaries of some literature. We talked about scoping reviews. It is an in-depth type of review, but slightly less rigorous than the systematic review. But we also still use some of the methodologies of the systematic review. For instance, the search. We use quite a number of publications, or we try to look for quite a number of evidences to input in our scoping review, because remember, you're just trying to find out what type of evidence is there in this particular question. That is for a scoping review. And then we have the rapid reviews, which are normally done to answer they're actually hastened to answer particular questions that need answers very quickly, and they take about 25 to 30 days. Up to there, I hope we are clear. And now I want to look at systematic reviews. We've looked at the different elements of a systematic reviews. We've seen that you need a protocol. You need to develop your protocol. By protocol, I mean the plan on how you're going to conduct your systematic review from start to the end. And by that, I mean from the time you develop your question to the time you're going to publish your work. What are these steps you're going to find? Something that I didn't mention is that, remember, that protocol can be published. Same to a scoping review, protocol can be published also. You can, maybe if you're doing a systematic review and you already have your protocol ready, that can be your publication number 1. If you're a student and trying to push these things, that can be your publication number 1, and it is acceptable. Once you've registered with Prospero, you can go ahead and submit it for publication in relevant journals. We've also looked at questions, how to come up with a question briefly. Another element is the predetermined selection criteria. Which studies are going to include? How are you going to include and exclude your studies? Explanation of types of evidences included and excluded. That's what I mean. And then critical examination of quality of included studies. And that's where the appraisal comes in. And we use different tools in appraising different studies. And this is just a way of also trying to reduce the biases. Remember, we said systematic reviews are those reviews where bias has been reduced completely to the minimum. And most importantly, for all these reviews, any evidence that you get out there needs to be transparent. Just clearly state your process of synthesizing and make it as transparent as possible. And for systematic review, you keep updating them. Those are the key elements for systematic reviews. So we'll delve into how to prepare a systematic review. And it requires three main components. You need to identify your review question. You need to come up with your review protocol. Remember, you cannot move into a systematic review without a protocol. And what you register in Prospero is actually the protocol. And once you register, you can only move on to systematic review stage. Once you have that Prospero number, we'll talk a bit about it later. Yeah, it's another whole presentation again. And then you also need a review team. Remember, there are some reviews that you need one or two, but for systematic reviews, you need quite a team. And as the author or as the project owner, you need to identify the relevant people. You don't just put people for the sake of it. Identify the roles and be sure that the people you're putting into the project are able to do that. Number one, you need someone to help support with the search. In most cases, most people run to the librarians, but you also have other specialists who can also support with conducting the search, because that is the most important person also. Okay, everyone is important, but remember, garbage in, garbage out. If you get someone who can't get you the right evidences to add into your systematic reviews, you might get it wrong completely. So be very sure of your search person. You need if possible, if you move to meta-analysis, which I think will be tackled tomorrow, you need someone who understands the different methods used and a good data manager also. And you also need now the other scientists or whichever field you are in, the people who can collect the information and do a proper write-up. And before the systematic review starts, you need to sit down with your team and clearly ensure everyone has understood the protocol and assign everyone's responsibility. And I've assigned each and every person his or her responsibility. As we talked about the protocol, it is used continuously because in each and every stage of your review, you keep consulting with your protocol. And in cases whereby you might have to change something, you might need to communicate also to Prospero. If it's a major change that you've done in your protocol, you need to communicate to them and let them know that you've made some changes here and there with regards to the protocol, and that will affect the processes that you have. The review question should be clear, well-defined, appropriate, manageable, and relevant to the outcomes. As I had mentioned earlier, think about the PICO elements in your review question. What is your population? Actually, what are you doing? Are you conducting a study in a particular population? Is there an intervention or there is no intervention? If there is an intervention, you need to clearly bring it out, and this should be clearly stated in your protocol. And a comparator, in most cases, we don't have comparators, but where there is a comparator, by comparator, I mean the comparisons that are there. If you're comparing two drugs, you need to be clear that this is the main drug, but the drug B is the comparator. And then time frame, outcome is very important. You need to clearly bring it out. Bring out your outcomes clearly. And if we had time, or if I'll get a different session, we'll just talk about outcomes because it's an important element. I'll find out with Fortune if there's any other session where we can bring in that, how to develop a clear question with relevant outcomes. And then there might be an element of time frame which should be included. That should be depicted in your research question. Yeah, it is a long process. Protocol preparation is a long process, and we need to be aware of that. And the team helped in to minimize biases because we have different responsibilities, and we keep checking with each other as a team. I hope up to that, it's okay. Clearly bring out the aim of the review protocol. These I think I'll share with Fortune just a template, a systematic review template for all these sections. And in your, where we have the aim of the review protocol, it's the section where you need to describe the current evidence that is there. From that, we normally identify the problem, the gaps from those evidences that you have already. Identify that gap clearly, and then now specify the method and answers you're going to use. That is the aim of that protocol. Why this review? The answer should come there and should be clear, and just clearly bring out the included and excluded studies. If you're going to include clinical trials only, be clear with that. If you're going to include all type of studies, be clear with that. If you're going to, yeah, it depends with what you're doing. And then be very comprehensive, give comprehensive information on how exactly each stage is going to be conducted. Clearly identify your outcomes. We have the primary and the secondary outcomes. These need to be clear. Are we together up to there?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. And then I talked about registering this systematic review into Prospero. Prospero, I don't know how many people have used this platform before. I think one or two people say that they're already working on their systematic reviews. And I know there should be more because we have quite a number of people online. I couldn't check the introductions and what they're doing. But I know some people have interacted with Prospero, some have not. But this is how the landing page looks like. You have to register with Prospero. It's an easy process. You don't need to pay any money. You register with Prospero, and then you'll have an account with them. And anytime you have your review ready, you log in. But remember, before you settle on your topic, Prospero comes in very handy because we have so many other, all the reviews, rightly done reviews have been registered with Prospero. So you need to go to Prospero and search and be sure that your review has not been conducted by someone else to avoid duplication of work. That's another important importance of Prospero registration and Prospero platform. It helps you to identify if there's any other review close to yours or a similar review that is ongoing or that has been done. Is there any question? I keep hearing like there's someone talking. Any clarity?
Yeah, yes, Lillian, I think we will take questions at the end of your session.
Okay, okay, I just had someone saying something. Okay, thank you for the clarification. Okay, so for this platform, you search for the ongoing reviews or the registered reviews just to avoid duplication. Because when you're conducting a review that has already been conducted, you might find it hard to publish that review. Okay. When you talk of a review question, we talked of the 4 components, the PICO, the 4 common components, but remember we have the S and T. We have the T, the time frame. And then search for studies. I have not touched much on conducting the search. Maybe just to say a bit about search, there's need for a search strategy. But before that, you've identified your question, you know what you want. Before that, you need to identify the databases you're going to use. Remember, publications are not only in PubMed or Embase. We have many other types of platforms, databases. You not only use peer-reviewed journals, but you can also use non-peer reviewed if they are relevant, or even just media announcements or something, or newspaper issues that are coming. I remember during COVID, nothing much has, by the time COVID was coming, we didn't have quite a number of studies on that. So you'll find that a lot of gray literature was being used. You'll find that most researchers were using studies that had similar experiences. We didn't have the specific ones on COVID-19, but still you could access data or some bit of evidence just to inform some of the things that you need to. And then there's need to search for more than one database. And just examples of these databases include PubMed. We have the Cochrane Central Register for controlled trials. We have Medline, Embase, Lilac, Google Scholar. We can also use conference proceedings. And then we also have some databases that are specific to particular elements. For instance, you can have some specific HIV databases that you can look at if you're looking at maybe a question on HIV issues surrounding HIV. You can have specific on respiratory infections. We have databases specific to that. And people in that field, if you're in that field, definitely you know about them. I might not be knowing them, but they're there. You can check depending on what you're doing. We also have the meta-register of controlled trials. If you're looking at controlled trials, there are different databases that you can use for that. So the more, the better, because even as you conduct your search, you will keep filtering to get the best that you want. And how do we do this filtering? We do it through a process called a screening of studies. Once you get let's say 200 journal papers, you can start your screening process. You can, that's I was saying that systematic reviews, you need at least 2 people. And you'll find that the 2 people are the ones who are going to start the screening. If you're more, you can have 3 people conducting the screening, whereby you identify the 200 and both of you look at them, screening by title, just checking the title is okay. There's a way you can even screen by title through PubMed. You just identify the titles, some of the relevant words that you want in that title, it gives you. And then now you do the physical screening, looking at the publication then. So just the title and you move, titles and you move. For those you feel are not relevant, you put aside. For those that are relevant, you put them together. And from that stage, you'll have a second reviewer just trying to look at those. Remember we talked about transparency. Transparency means that, you have to do that with someone else, just counter checking with someone else to make sure that you have the relevant data. And then use the inclusion criteria when you're selecting your studies. Remember, we talked about this in your title. You have an inclusion, because the inclusion criteria is normally informed by your title. And on your protocol, you've already laid down your inclusion criteria. So identify the inclusion criteria. If you talk to children under 5 years of age only, looking at, just an example, looking at syncytial respiratory viruses in children under 5 years of age, let it remain to be children under 5 years of age. If there's anything talking above that, or you exclude them. Once you've done that, most of these stages are done in 2 stages, whereby you have the first and the second. You also move ahead and do the abstract screening, just screening the abstracts to make sure that you have the right paper. And this process will also help you reduce biases, and it will also help you to filter what is irrelevant. In the process, reduce biases, actually. Yeah. So we've talked about search for studies and how you can screen the studies. And now, data extraction. Data extraction is, again, another very wide, it's a whole presentation again, because there are many ways in which this data extraction is done. And why are you extracting the data? Because now that is where the meat of the review is. Once you've said you've remained with your 50 publication or 60 publication, you need a plan on how you're going to get the data from those publications. And this is done through a document called a data extraction form. You develop your data extraction form, which is informed by your question, your exclusion and inclusion criteria, because there are different sections in that data extraction form, which means you're going to pull some information depending on what you've laid down in that data extraction form. If you're looking at adolescents, you'll have a section just talking about, I'll extract data on adolescents, categorize the age there, be clear with the age, and then the elements you want to extract, the information you want to extract from the document. You also outline them in that form. So each paper you go through, you retrieve that, you try and pull out the information and fill in the data extraction form. And this process needs at least 2 authors. 3 is the best, because the third author is normally to tie break. In case there are cases whereby you don't agree in terms of maybe the elements you're including or something, even preparation of the extraction form, the third author will be like the tiebreaker, will help you in making that decision. And then you need to be very systematic. And when you talk of the tiebreaker, we just mean the disagreement solver is the third author. Once you've extracted your data, it is also another rigorous process, depending on the type of question you're handling. And yeah, I wish we had time, we could have really discussed that in depth, but that was not the plan for this. I was just told to do the introduction. So I'm just sharing the elements, the main elements of a systematic review. And then we also have the data analysis and synthesis section. These 2 sections are very important in a systematic review, extraction and synthesis. You need to have your analysis plan set. Remember, we talked about you keep consulting your protocol. So you go back to your protocol and see how the plan was like. Sit down with your team. This is what you've extracted. How do you want us to, how are we going to do it? You allocate each person the sections they want. If you want someone else to do the background section, if you want someone else to extract maybe the interventions that have been used before, if you're looking at an interventional study, before you delved into the gap identifier. If you want someone else to talk about the, just depends on how you're going to agree as a team. The data, yeah, once the data is collected, now you move to the next stage on the writing. This was clearly defined in the protocol, and you need to use that specific procedure as you had stated. In case of any changes, as we said, if you want to change some elements, kindly just refer to your protocol and maybe just notify Prospero, because remember you have a Prospero number that gave you an okay to go ahead with the publication, with the writing. So you need to keep updating changes in case they are there. And then for data analysis, there are several softwares that you also use, but I believe this has a section, Fortune, if I'm not wrong, we have someone who will talk about meta-analysis. Do we?
Yes, please.
Yes, so I won't talk much about it, but those are just some of the softwares. You have the Redman and okay, Stata, not so much, but okay, Redman and others. I use meta-analyst, used to be there. And then also identify all these tabs. I think the data part, I don't want to preempt much, but this will be discussed, I think, tomorrow, if I'm not wrong, where we have issues on heterogeneity, all that will be described tomorrow. And then the grade analysis, how it is conducted. So once you've done your data analysis, the next thing to do is the report writing. Report writing, still refer to your systematic review protocol. Who is handling what? As you do your report, it might not be important to mention, but it's always important to know who is the lead author and who is the first author. Because when it comes to report writing, that's where we normally have also a bit of contention. We need to know who is leading this process and who is the bearer of the, who is the bearer of the idea. That should be the first author, and who is guiding everyone else, who is the lead. Yeah, you need to come up with that structure, and then also just do your report systematically as defined in the protocol. And with that, unless there's anything else, I think that is how a systematic review is conducted. And I hope you've gotten some basics, just basics on evidence-informed decision-making and systematic reviews. As I told you, this is like a 1-week training, but giving me like 2 hours, yeah, just made me rush through everything. But 1 week could have been good for this particular one, evidence-informed decision-making 2 days, and maybe systematic reviews 3 days. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And now maybe we'll move to the next session.
Thank you very much, Lillian. So we take, yes, you can clap, please. Thank you very much, Lillian. We take questions for 10 minutes. So we have a question box we'll be sharing soon because we cannot possibly take all the questions. So the questions we're able to take, we'll go to the question box and Lillian will have access to the questions and your email and she'll respond to them.
Yes, for the mic. I have some questions. Okay, I think we are going to take questions and then we can provide, Lillian can possibly respond to them at once. Or how do we go about it, Lillian?
I would prefer one by one rather than having all of them and then answering. I prefer answering. If it's asked, and maybe I don't know how many we can be able to tackle with time.
Okay, so I'm going to read the questions from our virtual participants. The first question goes deep, that the participants did not hear about the mesh terms. Can you please talk about the mesh? And methodology is also crucial in the process of screening. They are requesting you to please talk about mesh and Prisma. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I will talk about, that is under searching for evidence. Lillian,
Alison, I'll conduct the session for literature search on day 3, and I'll cover each terms. So you could just work on, respond to the Prisma, but for the mesh, we shall talk about it on day 3. Thank you.
Okay, okay. And I think even Prisma will be tackled tomorrow.
Okay, I think we can proceed, but it's better to throw some light briefly so that they can get more information about that tomorrow. Thank you.
Yes?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I was saying Prisma will be tackled tomorrow also, if I'm not wrong. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Yes, please. So another question goes, what about bias issues when conducting rapid reviews?
Bias issues. Okay, here we talk of risk of bias, the Rob and Fortune. I think there's, I think even the risk of bias, we have Dr. Ekuro or someone.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, he'll tackle that because it is also a whole presentation. I mean, systematic review is too wide, and that's what I was saying. Even for my presentation alone, I think I needed like at least 3 days to tackle these EIDM and yeah, to tackle everything. Any other methodological issues? And
okay, the fourth question, does the number of years of articles being reviewed matter?
In some cases, yes, in some, no, because as I had mentioned, it also depends on the topic. There are some topics that you have overload of information that you might not need to go back to 1990 papers. We have papers being churned out like every day on that particular area. So for such, you might not need to go back. But if it is a new element that is coming into the ecosystem, you might have to go way back. For instance, I just gave an example of COVID. When we were doing a rapid review during COVID, when COVID had just come, we had to go back to other outbreaks that had happened earlier, both flu-like and all the other outbreaks that could just give us information on how to manage COVID-19. So that depends on the type of question that you're answering. But as any researcher says, the more the current, the better.
Okay, thank you. I think we will take questions from in-person. How many
I
questions?
can see online people also have some questions.
I think we can collect the questions from online people using the form. How many questions can we take here?
I think we can take two. I think there are just two hands raised. We can take two and then two online, and I think that works.
Thank you so much. The first question is, you said that there shouldn't be any restriction on the language. What if I'm not multilingual? What should I do there? Secondly, you say that if there is something significant, I should keep on informing the Prospero where I just had my protocol. Some examples of what you consider to be significant that I should keep Prospero updated. Thank you.
Okay, let me start with the second question on Prospero registration. It's just like the way you conduct the other studies, our normal ethical review bodies. Whenever we can be able to tell the significant changes and minimal changes. Significant changes are changes that affect the how you're going to conduct major processes. Maybe like if you change issues to do with the age, you had talked of under 5 years, but now you want to look at the whole population. You know, that's a significant change. Maybe you had talked of, which other example can I give? Yeah, you had talked of a particular, let's say you had talked of RSV, but now you want to change the whole thing to look at including influenza viruses. RSV is respiratory syncytial virus, but now you want to include more diseases into your study. That is a major change, and it's like a major, you need to update your protocol also. I don't know whether that's clear or needs more better. And then for your first question, what was the question again?
The issue is that there should not be any restriction on the language.
Oh, language restriction. Yeah, when you're searching language restriction now, of course, you will not have any restriction when you're searching for those studies. But now when you'll be screening, you'll be able to say if you need it or not. If it's not part of it's not your background, you have to do away with it because you have other that you understand. So it's just in the screening process. The screening process will help you go with it. Allowing more is just to help you dive deeper into the evidence that is available. Any other?
Yes, please. We have another question. Do we need ethical approval to conduct a systematic review?
No, you don't need any ethical approval. All you need, because remember, you're just looking at secondary data. All you need is to register with Prospero. The Prospero registration number is the one that is needed during your publication. Show that you already registered this and you're allowed to go ahead with it. no need of ethical approval. Mm-hmm.
Dr. Alison wants to add or chip something.
Sorry?
So when you're doing a systematic review, you are looking at already available evidence, what we call studies. Now, those primary studies would have gone through ethical review. So you don't go again for the systematic reviews because they are already reviewed.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, you're just using secondary data, so you don't need any ethical approval. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Madam Lillian. My first question is systematic reviews only in medical discipline, or we can take it in other disciplines? Then second question. Okay,
Do you have another? Okay, I'll answer this one then. For a long time, systematic reviews have been in the medical field only, but as we speak, people have started embracing it. We now have reviews in environmental issues. We have reviews in, I think I've seen quite a number of them in other industrial issues, so it is trying to grow. Just there's more embrace from the science community and wider. So it's not confined to medical field only, though that's where it all started. Thank you. Your second question, please.
The second question, I'm saying everyone is talking about Prospero for registration. Is it only one to register protocols, or we have any other to register protocols?
Unless I check, but that is the main one. Their protocol, the Cochrane reviews are now not registered in Prospero, just to clear that. If you're conducting a Cochrane review, you register through Cochrane, the Cochrane body. So I know of those two. We have the Prospero and Cochrane, depending on the type. And you remember, if it is not if it is an non-Cochrane review, you can't register it in Cochrane. You have to register it on Prospero.
Okay. Thank you. I think we should take two
Yes.
virtually. Then we can cover. The first hand I can see is Adekule. Can you unmute yourself and ask a question? Dr. Adekule I think. Are you there, please?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Am I audible enough?
Yes, you are.
Thank you so much, Lillian. That was a very, very insightful one. And it was well presented in such short period. Thank you so much. We really appreciate this. I just have one or two things to say, not a question per se. I am quite conversant with scoping review. I have 2 publications of scoping review. And I just want to say one or two things as regard that. That is basically why I had to attend these workshop. I'm a doctor, I'm a medical doctor, and I am at the same time a PhD candidate in injury epidemiology. So what I'm just trying to say is that with scoping review, I have now realized that scoping review and systematic review, they have basically virtually everything in common. Like, you see, well, like I said, I have 2 publications in scoping review. The next one is coming with BMC very soon. So what I just want to say is that when it comes to the strategy, you realize that the strategy in scoping review, though in scoping review, we follow this, we call it O'Malley and Luvac. They have a framework that we follow. And the only thing I can say is that with scoping review, where you require experts' views, it's optional, understand? And I think that is what I can say. And what another thing I can say is that with systematic review, though they use PICO, but with scoping review, we use PCC, where we talk about population, the content, and the context, for you to be able to form your title together with your research questions, this eligibility stuff. You understand? So another thing I would just want to say now is that with scoping review, I just want to state this, you can as well publish the protocol, because I published my own protocol with a Q1 journal. So I'm just saying that you can publish your protocol with scoping review, and at the same time, besides Prospero, I heard one of the participants asking that question. Besides Prospero, another how am I going to put it now? Should I say
registration platform?
Another place where you can have your protocol registered is what we call OSF, is Open Science Framework. I don't know if you're conversant with that.
Yes,
so, yes. It's so new, and that's what we can use. I'm just saying this because of the question the other person asked. So I'm really waiting for the analytic part of this systematic review. I think the difference in systematic review and scoping review has to do with the analysis, as in maybe because, with scoping review, you can use thematic, you can use narrative. So that is actually what I am actually waiting for, to be able to know if there's difference per se from this scoping and systematic review. Might took me like a year and a half to have one completed without even talking about the aspect of publishing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Adenkule. Conley. Yeah, that's very good additional information. Yeah, sure. As I mentioned earlier, the two are almost the same. In fact, a scoping review might even take longer than a systematic review, because a scoping review look at more publications compared to systematic reviews, because the scoping review question, the systematic review question is so particular, while the scoping review question is a bit opening you up to more publications. Thank you very much for that. And yeah, I hope the participants have also heard that. Really appreciated. Adonai. Thank you. Do you have more questions or time's up for questions?
Alien, virtually, can you hear us? Alien, are you there? And can you unmute yourself and ask your question? Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. I have one quick question. You mentioned that if we have changes to the protocol, we should constantly update Prospero. I'm wondering, after updating Prospero, can we immediately go ahead and publish the protocol before these changes have been effected on Prospero, or we should first wait to hear back from the Prospero team before going ahead to publish the protocol? Thank you.
Thank you, Alain, for that question. In most cases, you find that Prospero are normally very prompt. When you do an email, they respond so fast. Yeah, it's always good to wait, but I know the only time we had delays was during COVID-19, where everything else was put aside and they're only concentrating on COVID-19 protocols. Any protocol to do with COVID-19 was the ones that were being attended to. But currently, as we speak, and then again, you'll find that, yes, the changes are there, but in most cases, you find that not so many people add on things in the protocol or try to update the protocol because they don't have any changes. But in case they are there, just send and they respond so fast. Thank you. I hope that's clear, Alan.
Alien, are you good with are you happy with the response provided? I think we can take one more question virtually and one more question in person if Lillian is happy with that.
Yeah, okay, one more can do.
Okay.
Hello, thank you, Lillian. I'd like to ask, is it feasible to answer a question using both systematic review and qualitatively?
Just ask your question again, sorry.
I have a research question and I would like to answer it using both qualitative and systematic review. Is that feasible?
Oh, okay. When you talk of qualitative, it means a type. It can be a qualitative review, qualitative systematic review, where you're just looking at qualitative aspects.
No, okay. Systematic review as well as having interviews.
Sorry?
Doing interviews with individuals as well as having using systematic review. So is that feasible?
You know, when you're doing interviews, that's like a primary research. You're getting, that's not secondary data. That now will be a primary study. So it means it is a study on its own, and then you have your systematic review on its own. Because if you're conducting interviews, that's a qualitative study, as you say, but it is a primary study. You're getting primary data from your participants. And that is now a different type of, we can say it is on its own, unless I don't know how you want to combine it, but yeah, systematic reviews are just secondary, not primary. Is that, sorry?
Like, I have a question, but I want data from both angles. I need the systematic review answers as well as
yes. You can go ahead and you'll publish the qualitative separately as a journal paper. And you'll also publish your systematic review separately as a systematic review paper using the systematic review methodologies, while for the qualitative, you use your primary studies methodologies. I don't know if I'm clear or if there's anyone else who can elaborate further.
Yes, let me add on what you have, how you have responded. Yeah, there is what we call a meta synthesis. You can do a meta synthesis. That would be, if you want to do it qualitatively, you can do that. But there is no way you're going to systematic review, because if you look at the definition of a systematic review, we are looking at already available evidence. That means that you don't need those other studies that are already available, have already collected the data and published the evidence. You know, that's what we look at. In systematic reviews, we look at secondary evidence, not primary evidence. I hope it helps.
Thank you. Thank you for the response.
Yeah, so I think based on your research question, you could actually do two separate studies. Yeah, because one, the qualitative, will be a primary study, primary data collection, while the systematic review will be the second.
I thank you both. In the simplest terms, how then would you differentiate systematic review from ordinary literature review and document review, since some literature and some documents have also been informed by some studies?
Okay, thank you for that question. You can differentiate them through the methodologies. Remember, I took you through the systematic review methodologies, which are very rigorous. There's the issue element of risk, and we'll see more of this tomorrow when we're talking about data management and how to reduce biases, the ROB1 and ROB2, risk of bias analysis that will be done. Those are some of the methodologies that will differentiate the ordinary literature review and a systematic review. It's just based on the methodologies. Thank you.
Judge, if you are there, you can go ahead and put your question. Thank you. last question for this session. George, are you there? Can you hear us?
Okay.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation and session. My name is Dr. George Msengi, and actually we are currently doing systematic reviews with the National Institute of Medical Research here in Tanzania. My question was regarding the publishing of the protocol. And I just wanted a brief elaboration regarding how do you publish a protocol and it's only selective criteria of what you want to do in a systematic review, because you have no insights. You just have a directive on which direction you want to take in a systematic review. So how do you publish that? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, you can publish your protocol, and it goes through the normal publication process. And be it a scoping review or a systematic review, it will go through the normal publication process because it has information. It has information on what you want to do. That is also information that needs to be shared out there, unless maybe you're not sure of.
Lillian, please, we haven't taken questions from those in the YouTube. And one question is there a limited number of articles to be included in the scoping review?
No, there's no limited. It depends with how you want to answer your question, but there's normally no limited number. Same to scoping reviews and systematic, same to scoping reviews, just as systematic reviews.
All right, thank you. I think that will be the end of the question and answer session.
All right, thank you very much, Lillian. Please, before we go to the lunch break, I would like to add something on the systematic review and scoping review differences. Is that okay, please? Okay, thank you. So there are like three main differences, and you've mentioned one already, which is the scope. Usually the scope of the systematic review is smaller. The review question is very direct. So one other difference is quality. If you look at the stages of the scoping review, we are not interested in the quality of included articles, and we are not interested in the quality of the databases we are considering. There is nothing like risk of bias assessment or quality assessment for scoping reviews. But then when we look at systematic reviews, we are really, really interested in the quality of articles that we are including. So if a scoping review can map a question like what is the evidence for food system strategies amidst COVID-19, something like that. I'm just thinking of a random topic. That is how a scoping review question might potentially look like. And it essentially maps all the evidence. It looks at all the strategies, everything that has been published around food system resilience or food system strategies amidst COVID-19. So a scoping review can look like that. It's just to map evidence, what has been done, quality or not, just tell us what is available. But then a systematic review, sometimes it follows a scoping review. It can go ahead to answer a question of which of these strategies is more effective. So after looking at the strategies that are available, we now ask ourselves through a systematic review, which of these strategies is effective. So that's one other key difference. A systematic review looks at the quality of evidence and it kind of compare which strategy, which medical treatment, and so on and so forth. So that is another key difference. I don't know if that is okay. I mean, the virtual and in-person participants. Is that okay, please? Thank you very much. All right, Lillian, thank you very much. Do you have final words for us?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it has been a good session, and I've liked the interaction. And I would encourage that we keep having such training, keep attending systematic and basically EIDM trainings, which are very informative. And that's where actually the medical world and science as a whole is moving towards. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, something small. After a session, after lunch, I'm going to share review decision tree where you can look through all the various review types, and you choose one which is right for you. I'll share that with you. I can't find it now, but by after lunch, I'll share with everybody. Thank you.
Okay, Lillian, I'm also anticipating your checklist so we can share with the participants.
In addition, we have the question box. I've shared it via YouTube, WhatsApp, and email. So please, you can add the questions that are not being responded to, and we will see how to react to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, please, we have also shared the quizzes through the channels, and please remember it is a very important criteria for certification. And if you don't get up to a benchmark score, it might be impossible to get a certificate. Thank you very much. And we go into our lunch break for the next few minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, bye.
As we welcome our in-person participants for lunch, I would like to request our virtual participants to also grab something wherever they are. And thank you for joining us and staying with us up to this moment. Thank you. Lillian, thank you.
Thank you and goodbye.